My daughter had an anaphylactic reaction to peanuts on Monday afternoon. She had a biphasic reaction very early on Tuesday morning. It woke her up. As an account for food allergy awareness and education, I want to explain what happened. This is going to be a long video. If you know me, I like proper grammar in my captions, and I'm not even going there this time. If you know me, you know I don't usually speak directly to the camera because it's outside of my comfort zone, so bear with me on my notes, which are right down here. And if you know our account, we usually have 2 fluffy golden retrievers in our reels, and they're here, but one's on the floor, one's in the other room, and you won't likely be seeing them. But what you will hear about is the perfect storm for a food allergy reaction and the somewhat atypical way it showed up and how we handled it. As far as how we handled it, in retrospect, we did okay. There were things we could have done better, but I was working with limited information. Neither Harley nor I were at lunch. So again, Harley wasn't there, I wasn't there. Don't bother Monday morning quarterbacking. I'm doing enough of it and have been for the last almost 3 days. It's important to remember when you hear any story of someone having an allergic reaction that everyone is different, every kid is different, every reaction is different, and every circumstance in that moment is different. And it's absolutely impossible to put yourself in someone else's shoes. But what you can do is take it in and learn from it. Oakley Deb's reaction involved a lot of stomach pain. And we've never had stomach issues until this reaction. And both my daughter and I remembered that as everything was happening, and that helped us. My daughter was done with school early on Monday, so my ex-husband picked her up and took her to lunch before bringing her to my house to go to her orthodontist appointment that we clearly never made it to. Harley doesn't go to school with her, so she wasn't there to check her lunch. My daughter ordered a vegetarian sandwich with avocado. She and my ex-husband informed them of her peanut allergy. The server said there were no peanuts. It turns out the sandwich had a pesto spread, and they make their pesto in-house, and they make their pesto with peanuts, not pine nuts, which pesto is typically made with and which my daughter is not allergic to. So not only was the restaurant sloppy in the handling of the food allergy, but what she ordered is not something that typically has peanuts anyway. They just make it that way. And Harley would have caught it if she was there. A perfect storm. She was hungry and ate quickly. She tends to eat quickly anyway. My ex-husband said she coughed once or twice while eating, but that was it, nothing obvious. He is allergic to shellfish, so he's pretty aware of this stuff. They got in the car and headed home to me. The ride's about 20 minutes. She started feeling bad in the car. When she got to me, her eyes were bloodshot, her face was red, and she was incredibly congested. It appeared to be a very bad environmental allergy, and given what our weather is at this time of the year, and she has environmental allergies, and that there was no known peanut ingestion and no further symptoms at this point, certainly none that I had ever seen before with her, this was the first thought. But I was skeptical because I didn't have all the information. I called the allergist, and they said to give her Benadryl and watch her. I know so many people hate Benadryl. That's fine. This is what our doctor said, and I was going with that. I'm also well aware that Benadryl can mask symptoms, so I was looking for that too. Bottom line was that this appeared very environmental, still no known ingestion. I was not going to epi for that. I gave her the Benadryl. Then her stomach started to really bother her, and this was within minutes. She was doubled over in pain. Now we were at 2 systems, still no known ingestion, no respiratory, and I was nervous to epi like we all are. But she and I separately remembered Oakley's stomach pain, and this point felt it was the food, and this was bad. Grabbed my purse, which has 2 AviQ, grabbed her school medical bag, which also has 2 AviQ, jumped in the car. My ex-husband rode in the back with her, and I drove us to the hospital, which is 5 minutes away from my house. You see these food allergy accounts, and you think we've epied multiple times. I've never had to epi until this week. And yes, I was afraid to epi, especially because I felt I was not working with enough information. She and I jumped out of the car and ran in. He parked the car and met us inside, and they took us right away, even though it was crowded because allergic reactions get bumped up to cardiac level. They took her blood and were assessing her while waiting for a room, and during this time she got itchy and her entire torso down to her upper thighs became red and hot. 3 systems. She also felt like she had the flu. She felt awful. They put us in a room and started her on steroids and gave her Pepsid. In the meantime, I had been trying to get the restaurant on the phone, and while they were setting her up in the room, I finally got them. They were busy. I told them I was in the ER and I needed to know what was in the pesto, and that's when they confirmed it was peanut. I told the nurse I wanted to epi. She told the doctor. He said yes. The nurse came in and epied her. Steroids, Benadryl, Pepsid. Nothing worked. Within 15 minutes of the epi, everything was calming down. The congestion went away last. Seeing the reversal of the reaction was mind-blowing. Do I wish I epied first and fast? Yes. Was I afraid to epi? Yes, but especially because I felt like I wasn't working with all the information. We went home after observation. They let us go after 4 hours. She was looking really good. And then she stayed up another 3 hours at home before going to bed. Well aware of biphasic reactions, I slept in sweats that I could run to the ER in. She slept with Harley with the door open, and we left a lot of lights on. She was also nervous and put on pajamas that I could easily epi her in, and that was her idea. We also made a note of which thigh was epied in the ER, because if we had to epi, we would do the other thigh. I don't know if that makes a difference hours afterwards, but when 2 injections are needed immediately, they do say to do the other thigh. At 4:45 Tuesday morning, she was woken up by congestion coming on. And remember, this was one of the first symptoms from the day before. She came in to tell me about the congestion, and her throat felt tight and her chest felt heavy. So we went into her room, laid her on her back, put her feet up on the bed, and I epied the other thigh. Side note, if anyone from AviQ is listening, thank you for making a device that walks you through it, takes away some of the fear. And that being said, next time you record the device, if you could add a "you go girl" at the end, please, that'd be great. She stayed on the floor, her symptoms subsided, and after about 20 minutes when she was feeling better, we got up, grabbed waters, and made good bars and chargers, and went back to the ER for observation. Luckily at that hour, it's pretty empty. They didn't hook her up like the night before. They monitored her oxygen, gave her steroids and Benadryl, and by 9:30 in the morning, they sent us home with a prescription for a course of steroids and another set of epis. She slept most of the day until we could go to her rescheduled orthodontist appointment, because it was actually an emergency appointment for something that broke over the Thanksgiving weekend. While we were there, she started breathing heavily and feeling funny. I felt it was some anxiety setting in, which it actually was. I spoke to our allergist, and he said that at this point she's had a lot of steroids, which makes you feel jittery. And he doesn't always prescribe a course of steroids after a reaction, which every allergist is different, but he doesn't always do that. And he said that if she's feeling this way, she has so much in her that it might be best not to take it, which is what we decided to do. And she did calm down, and she was back at school yesterday, Wednesday. Some of the things we learned. There's going to be a slip up. Our allergist told us that the very first time we were in his office. Always carry 2 epinephrine auto injectors. The restaurant messed up, and it was one of the few times Harley wasn't there to catch it. It was a perfect storm. We haven't had a reaction in over 10 years. Don't be afraid to epi. I was afraid, but then I wasn't. I saw it with my own eyes. Epinephrine is the only thing that will reverse anaphylaxis. Recognize that there are other symptoms than respiratory, and they can be severe. Listen to other people's stories to help you recognize them. As I said before, Oakley's story and his stomach pain, which we had never experienced before, made my daughter and me separately realize that this was really bad. Be on the lookout and be prepared for biphasic reactions, especially if the initial reaction was bad. Take a phone charger to the ER. I know a lot of you have dealt with reactions more than we have, and I also know a lot of you have had 1 or 2 and are anxious about situations like this, which is exactly how I felt. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me. My DMs exploded the other day like never before, so I'm still catching up, but I will get back to you. And if there's a question I see multiple times, I can address that in a reel or my stories too. I promise to have Harley and Joey in the next post. Keep your eppies on you and your kids. Stay safe.